Recently, it has been marked the Unai-versary, 1 whole year of Unai Emery at Aston Villa Football Club. And what a year it's been, mate. It's been quite the ride that we're nowhere near getting off yet. This is only the beginning, and that is what makes it so much more exciting. Obviously, we're going to cover the AZ Alkmaar game for those of you guys who are listening on Spotify and Apple as well. But I'm excited for this one, mate, because it's a big game, as you were just saying off air. This is what it's all about, right? And to sort of the cherry on top of the cake, obviously, with it being the Unai-versary, this is going to be a very, very entertaining game for sure, isn't it, mate?
Yeah, this is it. This is it. I think it's so fitting that it's in European competition because he's the specialist. He's the guy. This is why we brought him in, is that so when eventually Villa got to this stage, he would be the guy to hopefully lead us to glory. And so I think it's really fitting that his first game, like the first game in what is now the second year of Emery ball at Villa Park, takes us out onto the continent. This is where he lives. This is where he thrives. We haven't quite seen it in full flight just yet. But maybe, just maybe, this is the game where the shackles come off.
Quite possibly, mate. Quite possibly. And listen, we'll come to that in a little bit because Unai Emery, first of all, mate, I'm sure plenty of people have seen this floating around online, but the Premier League table for the calendar year of 2023 has Aston Villa currently in third. Obviously, the Premier League isn't played year to year. That's not how it works, but it's good to know that throughout the whole year, Villa have been extremely consistent. That is 31 games played, 62 points amassed, equalled by Arsenal in second, and only Manchester City have scored more points in the Premier League than Aston Villa in the year of 2023. It's amazing. I find it funny because, especially recently, there's been plenty of Roberto De Zerbi discourse, especially when Guardiola was sort of hyping him up, and there was that City-Brighton game at the weekend as well, and we're talking about De Zerbi potentially getting the Manchester City job. There's naturally as well, obviously for good reason, a lot of good talk about Eddie Howe as well and the job that he's doing at Newcastle. I think they're on like a 8-game, maybe even 9-game unbeaten run currently. Unai Emery doesn't seem to be getting the credit that he deserves for the job that he's done. We sat in 16th before Emery took over, and we're now 5th in the Premier League, firmly knocking at the door with what is a very, very tasty run of fixtures coming up in the league, which gives us the opportunity to either solidify our spot in 5th, which, by the way, after next season, top 5 gets Champions League. I think a lot of people are forgetting this. Or propels us potentially into the more established top 4, which is absolutely crazy to think. And I can't think of a manager that has come in and had that much of an impact in my lifetime at many clubs. I mean, again, Eddie Howe, of course, turned Newcastle around, did a phenomenal job, doing a phenomenal job. I can already see the Geordies in the comments going crazy. But the reason I mention this, mate, is because I've sort of gone back and I've revisited the coverage from the game at the weekend and even Monday Night Football, right? And it just kind of feels like Unai Emery is no matter how good he does, he's constantly going to get beaten with the Arsenal stick. And I just feel like that's totally unfair. Like, what we're seeing right now is an elite manager who is getting the most out of players who represented Aston Villa Football Club in the Championship. In the Championship. Like, okay, it didn't go well at Arsenal, but you don't see David Moyes getting that same critique when West Ham are also in a very similar position to us. It's not, obviously, failed at Man United, so David Moyes clearly isn't, up to a good job in the Premier League. I'm looking at you, Jamie Carragher. Obviously, we've said many a time on this podcast, mate, and just to reiterate as well, more than happy for us to go under the radar. But we do genuinely. I think there's only 2 managers in the Premier League that are better than Unai Emery, and that's Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp. I genuinely think we have the 3rd best manager in the Premier League.
Well, the 2023 table would tell you that, no? It's been amazing. It's been amazing. What a ride. And it's so interesting you kind of make that point about the Arsenal stick and everything like that, because I think there's a argument to say that this is Unai's, with all due respect to the club that I adore, his level. It's in
Probably.
that kind of in-between level where he succeeds, because he's had jobs at Paris Saint-Germain, he's had jobs at Arsenal, he's managed Europeans elite, but it's at Sevilla, Valencia, Villarreal, now Villa, that he's really found this success. And I think that he's just really hit his sweet spot in Villa, because it is that next tier down of Premier League clubs. Traditionally, we're not in and around the top floor. We've not been getting Champions League or anything like that. This is our first season in Europe for 13 years. We have been kind of very much in that, at best, middle of the pack, really. It's been a lot lower than that in those 13 years as well. But he has the best of both worlds, because we bring that kind of big club mentality off the pitch with FW and the money that they're putting in, and the investment and how much they're willing to back Unai, with the sporting project that we have going on with the academy and everything that's going on at Bodymore and the inner city training complex and everything like that. All of the developments that we're seeing from a kind of commercial level, and be that as it may, good or bad, whatever your kind of views on that, Villa are making moves out in the kind of off-pitch sphere. You look at the Vissel Kobe stuff, the V Sports expansion to Vitoria Guimarães, ZFC in Egypt, and now Vissel Kobe, and all of these kind of things. We're moving like a big club, but we don't have that status. And I think that's just works perfectly for Unai, because I think he comes in here and the players will soak up everything he says like a sponge, because he's the best manager that a lot of this squad will have ever played for, really. And so he will come in here and have such a stamp of authority, whereas he had to kind of follow Arsene Wenger at Arsenal, and that's always, as a poison chalice, to be honest with you. David Moyes suffered the very same fate. It's a really good comparison between the two. But what he's kind of gone on to achieve at Villa is remarkable. There's a stat that's doing the rounds. He's managed 34 Premier League games. His next game, our home match against Luton, will be his 35th. Throughout those 34 games, he's averaged 2 points a match for Aston Villa, which is just crazy. There are only 8 other managers in Premier League history that have averaged 2 or more points a game over a period longer than 34 matches. And they are Jose Mourinho at both his spells at Chelsea, Carlo Ancelotti at Chelsea, Roberto Mancini at Manchester City, Mauricio Pellegrini at Manchester City, Sir Alex Ferguson at Manchester United, Pep Guardiola at Man City, and Jurgen Klopp at Liverpool. All of those 8 managers went on to win the league with their clubs. Now, I'm not saying anything. I'm not tempting fate, but those numbers are outrageous.
That's a joke, man. That's so. You've got me gassed for the Aston Villa title charge next season. It's amazing, and that's the thing as well. He's obviously not had a full season. I know those stats that you just provided, mate, are 35 game, 34. You're basically there. You're 1 or 2 off, right? But he's not had a full season, start to finish, which is what we're experiencing now. So it's going to be very interesting to see how we transition, how we obviously cope with the European football as well. We've had qualms with cup competitions and Unai that we've mentioned in previous podcasts, and I guess some of those points are going to come up in this AZ Alkmaar discussion, mate, because they're in bloody good form.